So we have got any apologies and changes in membership? I don't think so. I think everybody's here that should be here. I think everybody's turned up today. Andy, welcome. So everybody's fine. I know we had a vacancy for reform, but I don't think they filled that. So, so the minutes. Does anybody have any queries on the minutes at all? Can I sign them off as okay? We have affirmation that they're fine, just so I know. Thank you very much. I'd like to check. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Anybody got a declaration of interest, please, that we should know about? I take that as no. Silence is golden. Okay, so update on actions. Pages 11 to 18. Anybody want to bring anything up that they've spotted in there that they want to speak about at all? There's one thing I want to say on here. So Karen, I don't know how that's spelled, but it's not the way my name's spelled. But we'll forget about that bit. But the Monktonmede Flood Group is meeting up regularly. Wider link with Ryde Town Council Flood Group is underway. So there's a lot of work going on there. But I know we're going to try and set up a meeting for in here with everybody and Southern Water, etc. I don't think Southern Water's here yet, are they? No. Okay, we'll do that. Anybody else want to bring a thing? Councillor Blake.
Chair, thank you. Only to say that at the beginning of this cycle, we outlined as a committee we wanted to set up a working group around the crematorium and its services. Just refresh that on to the committee's working plan moving forward.
The service director's not here for that, but can somebody, Sarah, could you put that on there? You made a note, yeah, we'll make a note. So let's go back to Alex. Thank you very much for the next year for that one. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Church.
Yes, on page 15, about a public education campaign to raise awareness. I would like to ask, how do we get the National Trust involved in this? And the reason I say that, I live at Luckham. The Luckham farm was bought by the National Trust. They never clear the ditches and we get ponding in the field. And we all know ponding is dangerous. So how do we, or can we, contact the National Trust and ask them to start clearing ditches, watercourses on land that they own? Thank you, Chair.
That's noted, Councillor Churchman. Thank you very much. Anybody else? I think obviously in the next year after the elections, we'll probably look at that again and come up with some. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I think it's been raised in others forum. I've been to so many, I lose track, whether it was this committee or otherwise. One of the mentions is of Flood Re, which is obviously a national scheme. There's been some suggestion that that might be extended to areas prone to landslides as well. Obviously, that's something which affects the Isle of Wight. I just wondered whether there had been any sort of progress on that. It's a very recent suggestion, so I suspect we won't be getting very far, but it might be worth putting on the agenda for this committee at a later date.
We get an update. Is that all right? Sarah? Do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have an update. As many of you know, a number of members of the authority and officers responded to a parliamentary inquiry in November relating to coastal loss, landslides and adaptation. One of the key recommendations that was published on Friday from the outcome of that parliamentary inquiry was to look at extending those flood insurances to deal with those wider coastal erosion and landslide issues as recommended by representations from the Isle of Wight.
I'm trying to call me, sorry about that. Thank you for everything you did with that as well. Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Stewart? Anybody else? No? So moving on to public question time. So can I ask, Councillor Diana Conyers, would you like to ask your question? Welcome, by the way.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. I'm a Ryde Town councillor and I'm currently the mayor of Ryde. I would like to know when the council is going to address the problems of waste collection from properties 68 to 74 in George Street. Bins and gull sacks are left on the pavement and railings all the time, causing an eyesore and health hazard. This is in breach of your own regulations, which say that they can only be left out on the day of collection and that landlords have a responsibility to provide adequate waste storage. There is a need either to enforce those regulations or to provide alternative storage facilities. Ryde Town Council receives constant complaints about this from local residents, and we have been trying to get something done about it for many years. Following a consultation we did with landlords and tenants, we've suggested several alternative storage options and even offered to pay for these, but you have rejected our suggestions. I've actually attached a photograph. I don't know if you have copies of that, which was taken on a Saturday, last Saturday, at a time when the waste collection is on a Tuesday or so. But they're left out there all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. So the council was aware of persistent issues with waste presentation at 68 to 74 George Street. These 4 former townhouses now contain 37 separate residential accommodations made up of leaseholders, private rentals and HMOs. The buildings were not designed for the intensity of the occupation and have no viable internal communal space for storage waste and recycling between collections. This creates challenges for consistent compliance with the council's waste presentation requirements. Under section 34 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990, landlords and managing agents have a duty of care to provide their tenants with access to sufficient suitable storage for waste and recycling within the boundary of their property, ensure that waste is stored in compliance with the collection authority's instructions, ensure tenants are informed of correct waste presentation arrangements, and manage communal areas where they exist so that waste does not create a nuisance or hazard. Where properties are subdivided into multiple flats or HMOs, this responsibility remains with the freeholder, landlord or managing agent, not the council. The local authority is not responsible for providing bin storage facilities on private land. To support compliance, the council has offered internal bins to all properties 68 to 74 George Street. No landlord or agent has taken up this offer. These properties have an animal-proof reusable sacks to present recycling and waste in and some, but not all properties keep these on the railings of the property due to the lack of internal storage. Ryde Town Council has proposed several external bin storage concepts. For these to be delivered on the highway, 2 statutory requirements must be met. 1, planning permission bin stores must comply with supplementary planning document on waste storage arrangements, and 2, you need highway approval, including parking restrictions or land reallocation to create space. Rachel, do you know, do you have to have a consultation if you get rid of parking spaces as well? Okay. These powers sit with the Planning Authority and Highways Authority individually. The Waste Service cannot grant permission for a structure on the highway. The council has been clear that if Ryde Town Council secures the necessary planning approval and highway changes and constructs a compliant bin store, the council will instruct the waste service provider to collect from the store as the official presentation point. You'll get a copy, Diana. All right. Do you want a supplementary?
Because, well, it's really just to point out that number 66 is the same sort of property. It's at the end of that. And the landlord has provided storage at the back and the residents all comply with it. I just want to know why the council can't take more action to make the other landlords or the owners of the other buildings to do the same. Yeah.
My understanding, Tash, is that the other ones have been changed into living quarters.
The individual arrangements in the different buildings have different legal arrangements for ownership. So if someone has the freehold of the whole building and the back garden, then they can make a bin store for all the tenants within it. But the different buildings have different ownership models within them, and that isn't always possible where only the ground floor owner owns the garden. It would be up to them to decide if they wanted to give up their personal land for the other tenants. So it isn't, unfortunately, as simple as we would like it to be able to insist on that provision.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. There we got David Childs. Hello, David. So you wanted me to ask the question, didn't you? For several years now, the Environment Agency has had a policy of not dredging watercourses on the Isle of Wight. This has led to overtopping of floodwater during heavy downpours and sustained flooding affecting low-lying areas. This has been a significant factor in the flooding of River View Court, resulting in an evacuation due to safety concerns on Monday, February the 2nd of this year. Who will accept ownership of the responsibility for maintaining the tributary behind River View Court running towards the Canoe Lake, including full dredging of the length to connect with the Canoe Lake and the installation of the necessary flood defences to ensure that the future evacuation isn't necessary? Okay. So responsibility for the watercourse behind Riverview Court depends on the legal status of the channel and the adjoining land. This section of the watercourse is a main river, which means the Environment Agency is a designated risk management authority with permissive powers for maintenance. These powers allow the EA to carry out works where necessary for flood risk management, but they do not place a legal duty on the agency to dredge or deepen channels. The council as lead local flood authority does not have the responsibility of maintaining or dredging main rivers, nor does it have the power to require the EA or private landowners to carry out dredging operations. Similarly, the council cannot install flood defences on main rivers without EA approval. The council continues to work closely with the Environment Agency, Southern Water and Island Roads to review the recent flooding to ensure the appropriate risk management authorities are undertaking their respective roles and to identify proportionate mitigation options. Any proposals for maintenance interventions or flood defence improvements on this section of watercourse would fall within the Environment Agency's remit. And when you get the answer, there is a map on there to show you that. Okay. Have you got any supplementary questions that you want to ask? Are you sure? Okay, thank you. And then we got Stephen. Yeah, is that you? Yeah. Do you want me to answer it? I'll ask a question, yeah. So as residents who could be adversely affected by the discharge effects of the Southern Water proposed water recycling schemes, we would ask to be provided with further details and evidence of how the proposed water recycling scheme will affect water levels along the full length of the Eastern Yar and its tributaries. If water would only be discharged back into rivers in time of droughts, the scheme would only be fully operational for a small number of months each year. Is it financially viable for the amount proposed to be invested? And would this product of quantities of water be needed? So from us, the proposed water recycling scheme is a Southern Water Initiative and detailed evidence on how it would affect water levels in the Eastern Yard, including modelling, seasonal operating rules, environmental assessments and financial viability must be provided by Southern Water as part of its statutory supplements to the Environment Agency in Ofwat. We cannot comment on investments and financial viability. There is, when you get this, there is a planning, you can put your comments on it as well, okay? But basically, it's not the council, it's a private company. So you need to make your thoughts known on that planning application, okay? We'll make sure you get a copy of that. Terry Firth?
Yes.
Did you want me to ask it? Yeah, yes. So in 2016, the owner of Riverview Court, applied for a license to develop a holiday park that would only be occupied for part of the year, clearly to avoid having to submit a full planning application. He then marketed the site as a residential bungalow park for year-round occupation. The site is well known to be on a floodplain, and it's likely that the planning application would have been refused. Who is responsible for allowing the owner to breach the planning consent, which has been responsible? Who is responsible for allowing the owner to breach planning consent, which has been taken by the local authority to ensure the safety of residents, especially in the light of recent evacuation due to severe flooding? And the answer is from a planning perspective, because of the wording of the planning conditions attached to the historical planning permission, which was granted in 1961, the site for residential caravan park and stationing 55 caravans on the land, there is nothing that the local planning authority can enforce in terms of the site in its current formal use. The position was confirmed through the grant of a lawful development certificate in 2016, and this is all attached when you get this, okay? The lawful development certificate, granted on the 11th of August 2016, confirmed on that date use of the site for siting up to 55 residential caravans on the land was lawful as defined by section 191.2 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The lawful development established that the certificate established that the site continued to be a benefit from the historical 1961 planning permission for the stationing of the caravans on the land, which did not restrict the occupation of this residential caravans. This LDC, which is the lawful development certificate, can be viewed on the council's website. Again, you'll get this so you can have a look at it. Whilst the LDC confirms that the site can be used to station up to 55 residential caravans on the land, any like material change in the use of the land, i.e. additional caravans or undertaking of operations would constitute development as defined by section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. And it would require planning permission from the council in its capacity as the local planning authority. For clarity, at present, there is no breach of planning control for the local planning authority to enforce against. Okay, you all get copies of this. Thank you very much for your questions. Of course you can. Do you want to come to the microphone and press? No, you need to press because the people online won't hear you. So if you press the right-hand side one.
I think one of the things I did in preparation for coming here was to walk around the site and look at all the conditions which are laid down in the site license, which is issued by yourself. And it's quite interesting that there were 22 breaches of that license. Some of them minor, but some of them quite major. And I understand that there has been a review by the licensing people, which gave the site a clean bill of health. And I just cannot understand the laxity, if you like, or the generosity of whatever auditing is being done of that license.
Kevin, have you got something you'd like to say on that?
Thanks, Tash. So I'll repeat that for you, Chairman. Just introducing myself, I'm Kevin Winchcombe. I'm the licensing manager for the authority, and the inspections would have been undertaken by my staff. So what I will need to do is go back and review that the inspection was undertaken by the licensing officer and come back with a full explanation.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much. I did the same then. Okay, so onwards. So we've got our scrutiny items first. So the flood and coastal erosion scrutiny. So pages 19 to 246. Tash, did you want to introduce it at all?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all those for attending this evening. As you know, the Isle of Wight Council's Environment and Community Protection Committee holds the statutory responsibility for the overview and scrutiny of local flood risk management functions as set out in section 9JB of the Local Government Act 2000. Given the significance and reoccurring flood impact associated with the Eastern Yard catchment, the committee has identified the need for a focused scrutiny of recent and historic flooding in the area. This evening's session will bring together the RMAs who are here tonight to examine the causes, consequence and management of actions relating to the flooding areas along the Eastern Yard, drawing on the findings of the recently published Braiding Section 19 Flood Investigation Report and the historic Section 19 reports on Alveston, Eastern Yard and the Bembridge Flood Investigation Report 2022. This will provide you that opportunity as committee members to explore the evidence within these reports, assess any progress against previous recommendations and identify any recommendations you would like to make going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tash. That's wonderful. Who would like to open up with any questions for our partners around the room? I'm so sorry, I don't know who you are. Yeah. Thank you.
And for the microphone, that's Ian Walton, PSO team leader for the
I just never met you before. I know everybody else in the room, so thank you very much. Cameron, thank you so much.
The Braiding Section 19 report recommends a multi-agency review of the Braiding Marshes water level management plan within 1 year. Has that review now been commissioned? Who's leading it? And on what date will members and residents see the findings?
James, thank you so much.
Use that one. Thank you, Chair. James Brewer, Planning Policy Manager. So what we've done is set up the multi-agency group for the Eastern Yard catchment area. So that involves the Environment Agency, Southern Water, Island Roads, the RSPB. We've now got a Town Council representative on there as well. And the purpose of that group is to effectively look at that Eastern Yard catchment as a whole and see what works can be undertaken to potentially mitigate flooding in that area. Discuss the potential for a review of the water level management plan at the first meeting that we had, and I'm sure Vicky, the Environment Agency, will speak more on that. There's lots going on in that catchment. Network Rail are a partner as well, was obviously the railway line and some of their assets. And so we've got the next meeting of that group on Monday. We'll be following up some of the key issues that are occurring in that area. So we think about Nicholas Close. Heard about Review Court tonight as well. That'll be on the agenda to speak about as well in terms of what Tash mentioned earlier. So whose responsibility it is to look after some of those assets and what work can be done. So it's on the table. It's being discussed with the agencies as part of that catchment group, and that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you. Public gallery, could we just, I can hear you talk and it's just really off-putting. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Bacon, I know this affected your area as well, so.
It is my area. James, thank you for that. I think it would be, we need to be a little bit more transparent about what is happening. The report that was undertaken required a review of the water level management plan within 1 year. We are now significantly beyond that point, and I don't think you disagree with me when I say that the review has not taken place. However, as you point out, this group has come into being, but however, after a significant period of time. We've had one meeting, not all parties were present at that, and I know it's been difficult with the many things for you to do, but you have managed to pull together the next meeting for next Monday. My concern is with the clear recommendation in here, we are dragging our heels somewhat. As I say, the report suggested that review should be done within 1 year. We've had flooding incidents since, only a few weeks ago, the last one. We've got one property in the particularly affected street where the owners have still not been able to move back in after well over 2 years. It is clear that there is the potential for, no, not the potential, that the problem is going to get worse before it gets better in terms of risk being created to properties from St Helens through to Sandown effectively. And we've seen what happened at Riverview Court has been highlighted in the questions. So I'm trying to self-edit here because there's an awful lot I could talk about, but it's really, I think myself and particularly residents want to actually see a little bit more happening. And I'm trying not to be unfair because I know a lot of work has been going on the marshes. We've certainly seen a lot less in terms of incidents closing of Morton Road over last year. But one thing that's not helping is there isn't a clear information stream as to these works. Things are happening. I know they're happening, but I don't know what they are, when they're going on. And as a result, you get the residents still coming through and saying, why aren't they opening the sluice gates? And there's, sorry, I'm probably into braiding speak now. Everyone knows what the sluice gates are there, but they get the blame for everything. And we know they are not the sole cause, probably not even the primary cause. But I think there is a need for more determined action and more communication and local understanding of what is being done, when it's being done, and when the effects will come through. I could probably say quite a few more things, but I'll leave it there at the moment to just underline it with the fact that it is clear from the work that has been done that water level management plan, even if, I mean, we need this bigger group and we need to look at the bigger picture. There's so many issues affecting this area through from God's Hill to the Pembridge Harbour, but the water level management plan is a key element of that. And the report, if nothing else, was it the section 8 of the section 19 report made it very clear that it cannot be sure whether the water level management plan is not making things worse, and that is pretty boldly stated, page 32, I think it is, and so therefore, I accept other things are going on, but could that little bit of work be advanced without upsetting the rhythm of that bigger group? And could the rhythm just go up a few notches as well?
Councillor Blake, do you just want to ask the question? Who's going to answer? I thought we'd do a couple. Yeah, James, go on.
I'll start, and I think Vicky from the EA is going to mention as well. No, all fair comment and all noted. I think I will just add in that at that first meeting, the RSP presented some information around the sluice gates and the water level data associated with that, which I think, as you quite rightly said, Councillor Bacon, it's not sluice gates' fault, but obviously that sometimes is the impression that people have, and again take on board about the point about ponds of that. So we discussed that at the first meeting around that data from the RSPB and that water level management and the impact of the water level management plan, which I'll pass on to Vicky, but totally fair comment. I get it around momentum and keeping things going. The resources are clearly an issue, but that's something that we'll take on board.
And just to add to that, it's about the evidence around the water level management plan, actually the impact it's having and how far upstream that impact is felt. To couple with that, we're doing a lot of work in the upstream area of Yarbridge at the moment, looking at the culvert. We're looking at maybe some natural flood management techniques to take the pressure off the tributary for Nicholas Close. So we're going to discuss that in the meeting, and then obviously from the findings of that, we'll reflect that back.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just make a comment about the font in the Bembridge section being unreadable? It looks like, I say, yeah, it is elsewhere. It does look like a year 7's tried to make their homework look a bit more fancy. I think we could go into some of these parts of this report all night, and I'm conscious of the fact that we have a very heavy agenda tonight. But I equally want to make use of the fact that we have actually got the people like the environment in the room with us. What we need, and Councillor Bacon's alluded to it, is a thorough review going right back to the start of it in Whitwell and God's Hill, right way through to Brading and St Helens and Bembridge of the Eastern Yar there. Obviously, we've seen a lot of flooding up through the Whitwell and God's Hill Valley. That water then goes through largely undredged channels and then hits amasses and builds up exponentially to the point then when you have flooding through places like Riverview Court, which we've heard tonight. It's the flooding through Arraton as well, things like that. It's the making sure that all our landowners are doing everything that they are or should be doing to help the whole system, because that's what's been alluded to. Things like the sluice gates get pointed to, but it is only a tiny piece of the puzzle. And so we need to have that review. And I think also we need to look at seriously at things like, do we have water retention stations, like a mini reservoir as such, held further back through the Arraton Valley, so that we can consistently monitor and put out an equal flow of water through the Eastern Yar, given that it is susceptible to such large influxes. And also that might help us with our water shortage problem as well. So it's less of a question, Chair, but more of a statement.
So I was going to talk about sewer flooding, but can I just make a note, please, that Having Water aren't here again? Please can we make a note of that, and can we ask them to come next time? Because we can't really ask anybody of that, so that's very disappointing. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Blake for raising what I invariably raise at something like this, which is actually the scientific background to some of this stuff. Is basically we have a lot of water coming down in an area, in a catchment area, and what we need to do is reduce the flow to reduce the peak flood. And what I wanted to do is take you to page 20 or page 115, which is the recommendations and future actions. And there's a very short piece there which says, in 4, Isle of Wight Council to work with land management agencies and owners to investigate further land management actions that could be undertaken that would reduce flood risk. And because this is such a complex catchment area, I'm just wondering how far we've got towards that. Has anything been changed? And equally, is there any measurement of how much might be retained if the land management was adjusted towards either artificial or natural flood mitigation methodologies?
Vicky, would you like to? Thank you so much.
It's just to mention the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Trust, which are quite a large landholder up in the Eastern Yar. They've just recently completed 3 projects reconnecting the floodplain. And I know the Isle of Wight Council and certainly the Environment Agency are working with land management agencies, farmers, in discussions around their land, which once they would have used for grazing, which now we're asking to reconnect the floodplain. For the years, obviously, we've dredged those rivers. Quite a lot of them perched. Now we're trying to open them up and get them to use the natural floodplain again, which is obviously great for water storage. That's happening across certainly main rivers, and I know Isle of Wight Council is certainly talking to landowners around that as well, just trying to slow that flow down before it hits the next impounding structure, which happens when you dredge rivers. So it's just about slowing that flow through natural processes. That's happening in quite a lot of areas across the Isle of Wight.
Hopefully in mine as well. Down the hill. I'm going to go to Councillor Bacon because, sorry. Oh, you want a supplementary? Sorry.
Thank you for that. And everything like that is really welcome. But one of the issues is around what actual effects are there any data? Is there any data on how much effect that has? Because one of the issues is that we are seeing an increase in peak rainfalls intensity, and what I would like is at some stage that we actually look at the effects of what's happening. We all know that's going to be a good thing generally, but are we talking of reducing the peak flows by 5% or 10%? It's those sort of figures that will be useful so that we know, we have some idea about how we can reduce the frequencies of severe flooding, you know, from, if you go back, some of the ones we talk about are 1 in 5 years, one's 1 in 232 years. We know if we can improve the 1 in 5 to 1 in 10, that could make a big difference. So I suspect we won't have figures at this stage, but anything that you do have would be useful for us to see at some point.
All right, then you can.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is absolutely something that we can bring to a future committee. And I think it would be very helpful if we, through the agenda management session later in the evening, make that recommendation for a paper in July to come forward with that wider Eastern Yard catchment data set and a list of all the projects that are happening across all the different risk management agencies.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Bacon as it is his area. Very important.
Well, it's a point I could have made first time round, but I would like to pick up actually on the question that was submitted by Mr. Wilcox earlier, which Chair you answered in relation to the plans Southern Water submitted for a water recycling plant in Sandown. That originally came to my attention because there's a proposal for pipe work to run through the Adgeston area, obviously next to Brading, part of my ward. But there are some, as Mr. Wilcox very rightly identifies, in my view, there are some very worrying aspects of that proposal, and particularly in terms of discharge of water into the Eastern Yard. That's something that's approaching for a decision, although I believe the decision is not now likely until later this year, possibly even the autumn. But my plea to get the reviews done, the wider understanding of what the problems are with the water level management plan and in the Eastern Yard, I think we need those before an application like this can be properly determined. We need to know what the situation is in the Eastern Yard that any discharge from this proposal, this recycling plant, is releasing into. So we can, as James said, as Mr. Burrows said, it's about understanding the bigger picture, and that's why this bigger group is good. But when you have something this important in terms of the management of water on the island, if we don't know what it could be feeding into, what it could be affecting, how can we determine that? How can we deal with that? How can we know that we are carrying on the management and construction policies in relation to this part of our infrastructure, natural infrastructure, properly?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
I
Chair.
was going to ask another question that was related to that. But you answer that first. And
Yeah,
then we'll go.
just to say absolutely, and if anyone looks on the planning application file, there are responses from a number of the statutory consultees which raise issues such as that. That information has been requested from the applicant as part of the application process. So those questions, I think certainly some of the information asked by the public question, we as a local planning authority have asked for that information from the applicant, so it will form part of that decision-making process. So
But in fairness to the applicant, how can they comment on something when we're still doing the work to almost find those answers? That
Maybe the applicant has to do that work as part to justify effectively what they're putting forward. So there's a conversation to be had. So that say there is additional information requested from the applicant on some of these issues, which we as a local plan authority will need in front of us, like you rightly say, before we make a determination on that application.
Okay, Councillor Blake and then me.
A question very much adjacent to what the point that Councillor Bacon's making. I mean, if we're asking Southern Water to do that, we're effectively asking them to mark their own homework. We need to be doing that report ourselves to double check that what the information that they have built this whole case plan, business plan on, and they've already admitted to us in informal sessions that they think that this will only be feasible to be able to work for the real dry months of the year, typically around 2 months a year, in order to be safe. But what information they're using to come up with that proposal, it could be that it could be even a smaller time frame than that it could be useful. So that is a really, really key point, because this is the whole thing it's been built on is that lack of water, but we don't know fully what's in and around them can be utilised. And so if we're asking them to produce the report that we ought to be producing, then I think the two should be done in parallel, so to double check each other rather than asking them to do it entirely on their own.
On that, Tash, just because it's a planning application, do we have to do it individually while worries into it? Can we do one as a committee?
As I say, if I think the official deadline for consultation comments is closed, but obviously if people still want to send comments on that application, they can. Anything we receive up to the point of determination, we'll take into account. But I think just to kind of allay fears, obviously, if someone submits a planning application to us, it is their responsibility to justify what they're proposing to us. If they can't do that with the information provided to us, then the LPA obviously can take the decision to not accept that planning application. So I think that's, at the end of the day, we've had a planning application submitted to us. We've asked for further information from the applicant to justify what they're proposing, and it's now to them to be able to provide that information to us. Or if they can't, they can't, and then obviously we'll make a decision on that basis.
Chair, just on a point of information, perhaps this might provide some comfort for members of the public. I understand the quantity and nature of the information that's been requested will mean that there will need to be a further public consultation. So there will be while people can send in things anyway, there will be a further formal opportunity for representations to be made once that information has been received by the planning authority. That's correct, is it not?
As far as I'm aware, if we receive a new package of information which is materially different to what we've had, then there would be a advertisement of that application and a further consultation period, yes.
So everybody's okay taking part in that consultation. Do you want to do something as a committee at all?
Too late now.
But we can send something in, can't we? Yeah, really. I was just wondering actually, so it's quite good for another time. Did you want to come in?
If it's helpful, Chair, obviously at the next meeting we could provide an update on the status of the application in terms of where it is in the process. So if we have received further information, has that triggered a reconsultation, etc. So we can give you a kind of factual update in the next committee if that would help.
Absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure that the member of the public would like that as well. So that's Stephen Wilcox, yeah. So that would be quite good. So status of the planning, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Cameron.
I was going to put a question to Southern Water on the wastewater pumping station, because they were supposed to do a review of the condition. But as they're not here, what I would like to know then is, was there any progress being made on a tracker publicly accessible with live updates, so that one, it keeps people informed of what's going on, and the public can see. Keeps the pressure on.
Pumping station.
Tracker on all of on everything that's going on.
Oh, like we have on our Monkton Mead Brook, yeah. Tash, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you know, we have the Section 19 recommendations tracker. We are having conversations with our digital content team about how we can best represent that information in a publicly accessible format on the internet. As Excel sheets are not particularly publicly accessible. So when we get to a conclusion with that conversation, then we will do our best to make a section of the website with the recommendation updates regularly updated on it.
Thank you for that, because I think that would help, and it would save probably Jonathan Bacon being asked loads of questions all the time by his residents, so that they can actually see what's going on.
I love being asked questions by my residents.
So, that should have been on this bit of work, because it came out as a recommendation from my one from Monkton Mead. So yeah, that's came out of that one, didn't it, Tasha? It came out of the section. Yeah, guys, can you? Hello. Hello, we could just hear you talking. It's hard to hear. Thank you. It's okay. That one came out of a recommendation from the Monkton Mead one, wasn't it? About getting it
Yeah, that
public
was a
facing.
recommendation that was made in the January scrutiny committee and a recommendation made in the
To
October.
make sure that goes through.
We
But I know
are
you're looking
working
into
on
that. Yeah,
getting
yeah.
that into
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Paul, have you got anything you'd like to bring up? You're okay. So, I've just written down a few recommendations. So, a communication plan regarding the water level management plan. Is that just to recap, Councillor Bacon, you were speaking about that, weren't you?
I think it'd be more useful for every
residents and us.
It's communication about the works that are being done and the effect they have. As I said, I'm sure Vicky could talk a lot about this. There have been a number of bits of work done in the Morton area that have had extremely positive effects and really pleasing to see. As I've mentioned to residents, I mentioned here earlier, the frequency of the flooding of Morton Road has diminished massively because of that. And I just think it's useful for people to understand what is being done so that they can relate the work to the effects that can be seen. And it does get away from that fact, oh, well, they must have opened the sluice gates and that's why the road's not flooded this time. And I think it would be a benefit to all.
Okay, so
just reputationally for the Environment Agency and the councils,
so
for people to know what is being
communication
done.
plan of the works regarding the water level
Done
management
and
plan.
planned and
Okay, we've got that
ongoing.
one. Yeah. Okay. Then we've got the Eastern Yard data set. We're going to bring that back. Yeah. So it's a recommendation. The status on the planning for the water recycling scheme. Okay. And the section 19, I'll bring it back in this one as it was brought up. It's really important. Is the section 19 tracker for public viewing. I know you're doing that, so we'll bring that back as a recommendation. Just check on it. Is there anything I've missed out on?
Could I ask that the group that's come together, I don't think we've got a name for it yet, but apart from giving it a name, that it meets regularly, because we've had two meetings, or we're going to have had 2 meetings in 6 months, and particularly with the recycling plant proposal coming along, I think it's almost, I think needs to be monthly, 6 weekly, something like that, just to get things rolling. And I'd like that to be a recommendation if at all possible.
Have you got that, Sarah? And then can we make 36 hours in a day? So 24. Please really help. Paul, you wanted to bring something up.
Yeah, I'm just very disappointed why Southern Water isn't here again. This is the second
His nameplate was there. He was supposed to come.
This is the second meeting now in a row where we haven't had a representative from.
I've made a note of it on the minutes. Yeah.
I just feel that it's disgraceful in a way. You know, they only have to come to several meetings a year and they don't bother coming along. And, you know, I had a question for Southern Water. Can't ask it because they're not here. So I'm going to have to do it direct. You know, from my point of view, I find that kind of thing unacceptable.
Yeah, I've put it in the minutes already. So,
Chair, if I may,
thank you, Paul. That's really on the button, I'm afraid.
And if I may add to that, Chair, the one time they did turn up, they put a time limit, a very short time limit on their stay at the meeting, and meant we had to curtail our questions to them. So I think we only had them for 1 hour and we should have had them for about 12 this year.
You know, from my point of view, we've seen quite significant increases in our southern water bills, and to have them not brushing us to the side is something that we should be making quite vocal comments about. I'm still seething, and that was why I didn't talk earlier on, because I was embarrassed that they're not here.
It's not respectful, I'm afraid. I'm of the same opinion. Okay, so everybody's happy with that, with recommendations taken forward. Thank you so much. Now on to the Community Safety Partnership Annual Report. It's that time of year again. Chief Inspector Andy McDonald's here, over there. Cameron, are you leading on this? Or is Michelle, or because you've got the hierarchy here. I don't know which way we are. So James, thank you so much for coming. Hi, Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm James Potter, Trading Standards Community Safety Manager, joined by Cameron Baxter, Community Safety Operational Manager, and also thank you to Andy McDonald from Hampshire and Police, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police, joining this evening as well. So this is about the Community Safety Partnership Annual Report in 2024 to 2025. The Community Safety Partnership, or the CSP, consists of several organisations working together to reduce crime, antisocial behaviour, and ensure residents and visitors feel safe. The CSP is under a duty to provide an annual report with several aims: provide a summary of research and analysis on crime and antisocial behaviour, highlight significant community safety issues, include information about key trends and emerging issues, enable identification of priorities for the CSP, inform the strategic plan, and identify gaps in knowledge which need to be understood and action taken. It is important for partners to understand the levels and patterns of crime and disorder on the Isle of Wight to enable them to ensure the right priorities are identified and to target resources effectively. The aim of the report is to provide partners with statistical analysis and information about crime, its changes, patterns over time, and where possible, an explanation as to why these changes have occurred. We're here this evening to consider the annual report of the CSP in accordance with the committee's statutory function to review or scrutinise decisions made or other action taken in connection with the discharge by the responsible authorities of their crime and disorder functions. And if the committee is happy, to approve that the CSP is fulfilling its statutory duty.
Thank you. Cameron, have you got anything you'd like to say on it? I know you work hard on this.
I've got my microphone on. It bleeds into a lot of other work that we do in other departments. It helps guide, as James said, the resources that we have to make best use of those resources and target elements that we've identified as emerging concerns within the island.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, in some of these crime figures we've got here, we're seeing an upward trend, but I believe that that's actually due to a better reporting of some of these crimes. And what isn't in there is the crime solved rates, which I think would be more sort of reassuring probably to some people. So I don't know if you just wanted to sort of speak to that very quickly.
Is that on?
Turning on.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, for inviting me along this evening. Thanks, Councillor. It's a really great question. I really would love to just add a little bit of context to the report there, because you're absolutely right. So in terms of the report there, it does mention about nominal rises in commission crime and also in relation to antisocial behaviour. So just to put that into a little bit of perspective. So in relation to antisocial behaviour, for this performance year, we've had 74 extra reported incidents of antisocial behaviour. And in relation to crime commission, that's 89 extra crimes here on the island in that year period. But you're absolutely right in relation to some of that is in relation to some areas of us actually policing in the right areas. So our proactive stops in relation to drugs and weapons has increased, and that's obviously increased that particular provision levels for those particular crimes. We've got a strengthened partnership with HMP, so in prison. So actually some matters that should have been reported as crimes due to an improved partnership with us in the prison environment, that's increased, particularly around violence. I'm really pleased that you've mentioned about the solved crime rate, and actually it's something that actually as district commander here I'm really proud of. So actually we've got a solved crime rate for this year to date of 21.5%. And just to put that into a little bit of context to you, that's the highest solved crime rate of any Hampshire and Isle of Wight district for the past 10 years. And actually that's an increase of about 4% from last year. So that's something we've worked tirelessly hard on, and actually it's through my teams that are out there on a day-to-day basis, we've been able to achieve that. So that's something we look back with some pride. It's going to be a significant challenge to maintain and improve that on the next year, but we just take that little moment, that foot on the ball, just to recognise what we've done over the past year.
Chair, if I may, as things like for information for residents out there, things like the UK PAC app, which currently is free for a year's use, and it's for shop owners and workers to have on their phones, and they can report shoplifting crime and other sort of shop-based crimes a lot easier. And that's, I think it's not all the reason why these numbers are going up, of course, but I think that there's a higher level of shoplifting being reported, but it's, as Andy said, it's getting solved, so which is brilliant. So,
The area commander was very involved with that, wasn't he? So he knows all about that. Paul, I'm going to bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 269, the change in recorded crime, and one of the increased areas that we have is the after robbery, miscellaneous crimes against society. What exactly is miscellaneous crimes against society? I'm asking that because there is an increase in those crimes. What precisely are they? Sorry.
So, yeah, it's a very interesting crime classification, and it does offer a multiple significant amount of differing crimes which don't fall into a traditional crime bracket. But and a good example of that will be some offences under the Harassment Act. It then goes over a plethora of different areas in terms of environmental crimes. But I'm really happy to provide the councillor offline the exact list there of what comes under malicious crimes against society.
So are we talking about things like public order, harassment, stalking, that kind of thing, which are more, I would have always said, crimes against the person, and can be sort of like linked with domestic abuse and things like that? Just giving some kind of slight idea of what that means would be really helpful.
Yeah, so it certainly doesn't come under domestic abuse, and we know here on the island domestic abuse, we are above the national average in the amount of crime we get reported in that particular area, and that just for reassurance to the committee, that's currently a district priority here for my teams in relation to our response to domestic abuse, not just the police response, but the wider partnership response here on the island, because actually it really causes a significant amount of harm here on the island, in particular in relation to our young people. But in the wider bits you're saying there, Councillor, it's more crimes in relation to property and in terms of some environmental bits in relation to, we have PSPO, so public space protection orders, and when we and CPNs, so community protection notices. So when we get to a stage that we go through that particular process and we get to the stage we've got to report a crime, those particular areas come in. So they're new bits of legislation that don't come under more traditional crime areas, like so assaults essentially is a bit of a legislation which goes back over 40 years, and it's more newer crime types that have been put through statute through more recent governments.
Isn't it?
Very complex.
Yeah, do you want to send that to me and
I
I'll get
actually
it?
do that, yeah.
Or, who should that come to? I don't mind it coming to me and then going out, but should it come to you, Michelle? Or should it come to James? And then it fed to the committee? Is it happy? There's some information that, is it, doesn't matter what the question is, but he's going to send some information. Is it right to come straight to me and I'll send it out?
If it could come to me, Chair.
Yeah, that's what I think. Can you
yeah.
send it to Michelle and then she'll run it
Yeah,
through? Thank
and
you.
then, yeah,
And if you
absolutely.
could just send it to all of us, it'd be brilliant. It's about, what was it? It was the the category
Oh,
called
Miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous crimes against society.
miscellaneous crimes.
Yeah, do send it through, and then I will, either
get
my
it through
team
to
or
our
I will
committee.
ensure that it's distributed to the committee and the appropriate people. Thank you.
Just wanted to get it right. Thank you very much. Councillor Cameron, thank you.
It seems reoffending remains above the England average. The community safety report says accommodation data is too poorly recorded to analyse reoffending properly. When will that data problem be fixed?
I think that's more, I don't, have we got colleagues from probation here this evening? Is that more a probation question? I think that probably, to get the answer that you need in relation to that, probably need to be channeled through the probation service.
Thank you. You've part answered my question already, which is about domestic abuse. And I was trying to sort of look at the figures and finally get them through my head. When we talk about above national average, what exactly does that mean? Because the figures don't match that I could see. And then I'll follow that up.
What I think you're obviously referencing something that's in the strategic needs assessment there, councillor, just to clarify.
Sorry, yes, page 276 and 277.
Okay, so what I would absolutely have to do is just take a little bit of a look outside this meeting and maybe come back to you. But so there's two sort of like headline figures when it comes to domestic abuse. So there's what we call intimate partner violence and more broader domestic abuse within the home, which can involve siblings and other relatives in the household there. Certainly when I give that figure in relation to we are above the national average is in relation to both of those particular areas. They're much more joined together, and I'm not sure if the figures that you have in front of you relate to one of those areas specifically. I need to probably liaise with Cameron and come back to you in relation to that.
Okay, well, let me just draw your attention to it estimates 6,000 people are subject to domestic abuse, which amounts to something like 4%, 1 in 25, whereas the national figures for all of it seem to be higher than that anyway. But that's one issue. What I'm concerned about is how we actually make sure that the issues that are causing this are actually dealt with, because obviously from the police point of view, you're dealing with the result of that and managing it after it happens. And obviously most of us are much more interested in how do we actually prevent that happening.
So I'll go first, Cam, if that's okay. So you would have seen recently, I forget what other committee this is managed from, but the new domestic abuse partnership plan's just been launched and it's been signed off at committee level. And actually that's a really quite holistic approach to how we deal with domestic abuse, and actually prevention is one of the key streams that run through that. Your new Director of Public Health, Kate Harvey, she chairs that domestic abuse partnership, and I would say the work that she's done in that very short space of time to bring partners together, have a really clear plan with prevention sitting at the heart of it, it is just starting to take effect across the island. And actually, I think in about a year's time, once it's been in effect for a meaningful period of time, we'll be able to really make an assessment there. But from my perspective, in terms of how is that supporting us, as you're quite right, we deal with the symptoms of domestic abuse. some of our more cases of significant harm and what our repeat cases are. It's joining up conversations far quicker, so actually we can try and bring non-criminal justice interventions into relation to those particular perpetrators and victims far earlier than we've been able to do before.
It's actually quite shocking here, isn't it, that it's domestic abuse. Those with disabilities, it's 9.2% of that group. Shocking, and older people more likely to be abused than anybody else. It really upsets me, those figures. Anybody else? Councillor Ward, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, looking at page 263 and health, it records there that death from drugs and alcohol is higher than the national average. Is there an easy answer to that? Why should that be? Don't know who's your answer.
Yeah, it's not.
We're all looking at each other for that one.
Yeah, it's not an easy one to answer. I mean, we had the annual update from Inclusion last week, which isn't part of this necessarily, but they did give us a flavour of the up-to-date experience they're having with frontline support of individuals with drug and alcohol needs. It reflects our findings within the strategic needs assessment in the sense that we've got a small cohort of individuals, maybe less than in some areas on the mainland, but they're using more drugs and alcohol here, in the same way that we've got a smaller cohort of individuals that might be committing a high proportion of crime on the island. So we do have a very complex demographic here in terms of social and economical issues as well. And just to touch on Andy's answer, the CSP doesn't duplicate work that's done by other departments. So although it mentions the domestic abuse strategy within the CSP, it's only to contextualise all the other work that goes on within this assessment. So we look at things like deprivation, lack of affordable housing, careers, so on and so forth, because they are fundamental things that may link to a rise in domestic abuse. So that's what the strategic needs assessment is. It's really a boiling pot of information and data sets from all of those partners where we can have a holistic review of what the issues are on the island and then try to draw out those thematic issues.
What struck me was when you look at our age demographic, to have more drug users than average, and you would think that if our demographic is elderly, then that means our youngsters must be taking more than the national average. Is that a good guess?
Yeah, I'm unable to. Yeah. It seems like a logical suggestion.
Andy?
I think you probably need someone from public health to give you the answer. But the broader point, I absolutely agree with the councillor in terms of, but I just want to highlight some really great work in relation to the symptoms of what you're saying about drug abuse. So we've had a series of pharmacy breaks here on the island since spring last year, 23 in total, and that is street attached drug using community breaking into our pharmacies, particularly Newport, Ryde and in the Bay Area, going in, stealing large amounts of prescription medication and putting pharmacies out of action for significant periods. The next day when we've got to close them down for crime scene investigation. There was a brilliant short, snappy piece of partnership work, but the community safety partnership were a really key pillar in relation to a partnership response to that. So I was always in a position of, actually, from my perspective, we were catching these people really quickly, putting them before the courts. We were going through a bit of a revolving door in relation to the criminal justice route where they were getting released out of prison after short custodial sentences. And then the partnership work kicked in terms of, from my perspective, this is a pretty easy fix in terms of we can prevent them getting into the premises. They're not going to be burgled. So that partnership work culminated in some significant funding for our Isle of Wight pharmacies in terms of target hardening the premises. So just an example, Day Lewis up in Newport's now got shutters on, so we can't get people going in there. Rink Road in Ryde's now got bars on the windows. And actually, it's a really, really good example of, in difficult times financially, but when we come together collectively, we can absolutely, achieve lots in that partnership forum there, and actually the obstacles in terms of finance will pretty easily overcome.
Remind me of the broken window, but I think it's a conservation area, so I suppose that's been a bit harder to fix maybe, but there's obviously somebody's broken in there. Councillor Ward, do you
I just wanted to come back and say, please don't think I was being critical. I was looking at crime figures over the weekend, and our worst figures are below the national average. So actually, you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Ian, you're okay because it's scrutiny. So you're allowed to. Anybody else? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Just this function used to sit under corporate scrutiny. And last iteration of that, I asked this question. I'd like to know if there's any different answer this year. I asked, is there anything that we can do as a council to help you as stakeholders? Or is there any sort of things that come to mind that you'd like to see us look at?
I can answer that. It does come down to resources. So unfortunately, the CSP isn't a funded mechanism. We do this on top of our day-to-day objectives as well. We put a lot of work into producing this document every year, and we identify areas where we could offer greater benefit, but then we struggle to get the resources together to progress with those things. I think resources is our key issue. I think if we had more staff for community safety as a department, I know it's something we've discussed over recent months with our hotspot areas, that facilitate us actually being able to action more from the community safety partnership. The requirements or requests that we make to partners for the community safety partnership are along the lines of work that we're already doing, but trying to add additional value. And we would like to explore where we could have brand new streams of work and bring back some of the nice to haves. But again, it's more resource intensive. I'm going to, if I may, please, Councillor Chair, if I come in as well. So I know Cameron has approached the town councils in terms of in putting into a bit of a resource. So obviously we do deliver under the Crime and Disorder Bill, and that's got certain statutory responsibility for organisations. The visible presence is quite heavily on the police in terms of the beat bobbies and the PCSOs. So my plea, and it is in difficult times, if that could be supported by the town councils and whatever this committee could do to do that, I'd be absolutely, from a police perspective, fully support that. The other bit in terms of opportunity, and I know our new area commander Marcus Cater is very alive to this, so we have a CCTV system here on the island. There is so many opportunities in terms of technology and AI now. In terms of the facility we have got was state of the art 10 years ago, but that area has moved on so rapidly that actually the resource we got here isn't maximising what it could do. And I know that's difficult in terms of like contracts and that requires funding, and there's nothing in the current arrangement there. But I know the new area commander is going to come and start opening a conversation about how do we make that happen here? How do we get the best out of that really valuable resource that could be protecting our towns and assisting us in terms of what we're doing in terms of law enforcement in the communities?
I know that when I was cabinet member, we started some work on this, didn't we? And Cameron did some work, so you did some policies, etc., didn't you, to look at what was going on there? Do you want to give us a bit of an update on anything that's going on there? Because it does keep looking at.
You're right. We did start work on a CCTV policy, and we do need to pick that up again. Probably a good time to pick it up now that we have the decision on local government reorganisation and the mayoral authority. And obviously we know from the letter yesterday that we retain our unitary, but they are expecting greater working with our partner authorities across the water in our combined county authority. We had some initial conversations with our colleagues in Portsmouth about whether or not we could combine CCTV capability in order to sort of get the best out of the budgets that we do have. Yes, ours is currently under a contract with Island Roads, but everything is negotiable. So if we had, if we had the plan and the funding, then potentially it could be lifted out of the contract, or more could be put into the contract, depending on which way we wanted to take it. So yeah, it's still ongoing. And we will, obviously, we can bring an update to the next committee if you would like that.
Yeah, can you put it on the work plan?
We
I know
can put it
haven't
on
done
the work
plan.
plan.
Can you put that on the work plan? Because I think that's really important. That's picked up. We've been speaking about it for a long time, haven't we? And I think that does.
Okay,
Now, like you said, now so you spoke to Portsmouth,
I'll
didn't
just
you?
confer with my team. July, would that be all right for a verbal update, or would you like us? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
July 30th,
Thank you.
ECP committee will bring a verbal update of with the situation as it is now, and potentially some, recommendations of where we could, how you would like to see the service.
And the police can be involved with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there somebody or you don't need to mention, but would it be you or would it be somebody else that would be involved?
Probably like to be me. We would probably like to have an engagement with the Police and Crime Commissioner in terms of, the office's support in relation to, because this is probably going to come down to some finance. So I think bringing them early into the conversation is really key.
Without spending Donna's money, originally she said she would help anyway, didn't she? So you're right, that needs to be a collaborative partnership working there.
Yeah, the Police Crime Commissioner she gave verbal confirmation, didn't she? So while she is still where she is and we are able to tap into that resource, then we will do so.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for your answers. So CCTV came up last year, Andy, and I think there was a standing offer from Donna that if we could get the Police and Crime Commissioner, if we could get the hardware installed, then the background would be sorted out through the PCC in terms of monitoring and stuff. But again, just to pick up on the community safety partnership point, I only missed one meeting this year. Apologies, that was the one yesterday because I had diary clash. But it's amazing what that committee does, the partnership does, actually, given the fact it exists on goodwill and fairy dust in terms of finances and resources. So thank you very much to James and to Cameron for putting that together, because it is a valuable resource, and I think it does a good bit of straightening of minds to bring everyone in the same way, I think so.
I'm going to ask this question, but I'm going to. One of the concerns that I'm getting from people out there is about domestic abuse cases. Domestic abuse cases used to go to court fairly swiftly because they had to. Now it's taking a long time to go through court because of staffing, the issues with the court service. When I speak to a member of the public and they said, well, we were told that a court case is going to take months and months to be heard, that has made me not want to feel as though I want to report a case against domestic abuse. What are we doing to try to address the issue with blockages within the courts? A few years ago, I think a lot of it is down to the personnel within the courts and the Ministry of Justice not properly funding new legal advisors coming on board.
Can I just say that's not anything to do with this report?
Well, it does, because there is a mention of domestic abuse.
No, but it doesn't. It's about the partnership working. It's not about courts and stuff. But Andy, are you happy to answer some of that?
Unfortunately,
but that's not really what we're talking about.
No, all I can say is I was at a post today with the Chief Constable, and what I would say, Councillor, he does share similar concerns, and at that appropriate level, he's having conversations with the judiciary and with the Crown Prosecution Service. That is more of an answer for them, I'm afraid.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. But again, domestic abuse is so important. Yes. You shouldn't brush it under the carpet.
No. Who you could ask a question of is Donna Jones. She's quite good at answering those sort of questions. We could funnel it through her if you wanted to. I think that's probably more appropriate. She's pretty good on that side of stuff. Okay, so this is the recommendation to consider the annual report for CSP in accordance with the committee's statutory function to review or scrutinise decisions made or other actions taken in connection with the discharge by the responsible authority of their crime and disorder functions. That the committee approve it is satisfied that this partnership is fulfilling its statutory duties. Can we have a show of hands, please, if you think they are? Well done, full house. Thank you very much, Andy. You don't have to stay. Cameron, James, you don't have to stay either if you don't want to. Okay, you go home. Thank you for coming to our last meeting of the year. Wonderful. Okay. Back to the beginning again. Where is it? Okay, so decisions time. Okay, so we've got to receive and consider the following items for decision. Parks and open spaces policy, pages 295 to 312, and we've also got a supplementary, but I think Tash will talk to us about that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to introduce the report before you this evening on the draft parks and open spaces policy, as well as a supplementary update regarding the recent announcement of government funding for playground improvements. Firstly, the draft parks and open spaces policy. As members will know, the council manages a large and diverse green estate from our principal parks, playgrounds, countryside sites, nature spaces across the island. Until now, these spaces have been managed as evolved over time and have not functioned under a policy. The draft policy presented today brings all of that into a coherent framework and is for public engagement after tonight. It sets out a clear long-term direction for how we may steward our green spaces, supporting health, well-being, diversity, climate resilience, access to nature, and the aspirations of our UNESCO biosphere status. Importantly, it also creates a consistent basis for the future stewardship arrangements, including where community groups, town parish councils could potentially take on responsibilities through community asset transfers. Today, we're asking the committee to endorse the draft policy as a foundation for a programme of structured engagement with communities and with members and with our residents. This engagement is essential to ensuring the final policy is practical, proportionate and shaped by members, partners and communities before it returns to this committee. Secondly, I also wish to highlight briefly the supplementary report that was circulated on Tuesday. On the 22nd of March, the government confirmed that the Isle of Wight Council is one of 66 authorities eligible to receive up to £270,000 to improve or create up to 3 playgrounds in areas where children experience the greatest combined levels of deprivation and limited access to play. To prepare for this, officers are beginning the work now to identify those priority areas, including mapping childhood deprivation, reviewing our current play provision and drawing on expertise from the Children's Services, Health and Joint Strategic Needs Assessment teams. Engagement with communities will begin after the May elections and in line with national requirements. Although this funding process is governed separately from the parks policy, we have brought forward this supplementary document to ensure that you know it aligns very strongly with policy principles around equity, evidence-led decision-making and improving children's health and well-being. So in summary, Chair, the draft parks and open spaces policy gives us a strong unified foundation and we look forward to that engagement with the community subject to your agreement. And the Playgrounds Fund will offer us a timely and targeted opportunity to support children in the areas that need it most. The Playground Fund, when we have done that data and public engagement, will come back to this committee to review the recommendations for areas for those improvements and review the expression of interest before it is resubmitted to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And I welcome any questions.
So the play spaces, you've got children-centred inclusive designs. Will you work with that community that you identify to work on that?
Yes, that is exactly what the engagement plan will be to identify those areas of the greatest overall deprivation and impact, and an assessment of where there are play gaps across the current provision that is between local authority, local councils and housing association play areas.
Exciting for that area. Good. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you for that. It's obviously a very high level policy, so I'll deal with the two things. First of all, playgrounds, and you did help by mentioning local councils there, but I would like to make that sure that is absolutely intrinsic. And the other thing, of course, is to include councillors, whether they're, whether it's before May the 7th, I think it is, or after, because they are the people on the ground who actually will have quite a strong knowledge of what is happening within their area. So that's the playground. In terms of park, and it's come up recently, and I know it's come up previously, one of the issues that we often face is that people get very concerned when there are material changes to parks, whether that's in terms of the biological side, i.e. trees mainly, but also obviously of man-made structures. And it does concern me that what we see often is changes, rapid actions with trees, for instance, where the councillor won't necessarily have been informed or be aware. And I see this elsewhere in council, but that doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is here. Could we make it, would it be possible to make sure that councillors were consulted or aware when significant works like this are done? Examples are always not necessarily very good for policy, but the recent removal of a tree in Apley Park in Ryde raised a lot of concern. And when I looked at the explanation for why it was being removed, I wondered whether there were other options that might have been available. We may not go as far as Japan, where they actually prop up decaying trees to keep them forever, virtually. But I certainly think that given the necessity to try and retain as much as we can to improve the local nature, and we'll deal with that later, there may be some way of bringing in other people, or at least considering whether there are other options available. Thank you.
Would you like to touch on that? I mean, I know the answer to that.
Yes, it is a really pertinent subject to discuss this evening. Trees are one of the most wonderful parts of our community. I think 16% of the Isle of Wight has a tree canopy over it, and many of our tree stock are incredibly valuable veteran trees. We have arboriculturalists on staff who do regular surveys, reviews and risk assessments of those trees. And for the best part, the majority of our tree stock is well looked after, is well risk managed. Unfortunately, there are times, as recently happened at the entrance of Apley, where a Pictus survey looking at the actual fungal levels within the root-based system underneath the tree revealed that there was a fungal base in the root system that would have caused serious harm if that tree was to fall over. And where it was located, next to a cafe, next to the entrance to the car park and on the main promenade of the seafront, that risk to human life was very high. So that was an unusually rapid calls to action, and local member was informed as soon as we knew that that was the recommendation from the arboriculturalist, and we did make sure that we did communication. Normally, if we have something that has more time based around it, as with the ancient willow tree that was very sadly lost last year in Church Lytton, we took a significant amount of time making sure that we could take cuttings from the tree, that the local community were involved, that the local community had an opportunity to gather their memories of the tree and have those stored with the local archives, and have replaced that with a 2-metre high placement willow tree like for like. Our trees policy, which you approved earlier this year, also does, not this year, last year, does guarantee that the local authority will replace any tree that we do have to remove with 2 more within the local area. So we are working very hard to ensure that our tree stock is not something that is taken for granted and that we do not lose things quickly. As you know, our parks team do have bi-monthly meetings with East and West Wight local councils, and do send out a weekly list of works everywhere around the island to keep everyone up to date with works that are taking place. But I do absolutely take your point and agree that we need to work very, very hard to make sure that both local councils and ward members are kept up to speed where a risk situation does arise, where we do have to move more rapidly than we would like to. Thank you.
Jamie?
Thank you. I'm not sure whether I'm puzzled or disappointed, because the policy doesn't mention common land at all. Is there a reason for that? Common land. Common land that is managed by the council.
I think it is purely a mistake that it is not there. But that is the whole point of engagement, to make sure that there isn't anything missed. We do manage 148 different parks, open spaces, countryside areas, and clearly the particular words of common land were missed. So I do apologise for that, and that will go back in as part of the engagement process.
Thank you, because it does have a different legislative regime applying to it.
Absolutely does.
Can I ask a second point as well? Certainly having to put my hand up again. I also wondered if the policy should potentially refer or contain something about delegation or passing of control of areas that it deals with. And I ask partly because I've mentioned common land. St Helens famously has a large area of common land in it, and there is currently a request for information as to how that could potentially be transferred to more local ownership through a Commons Council, which we're waiting on reply for, but there doesn't seem to be anything to guide that process, whatever the outcome might be. And I just wondered, because that might be something that arises in other areas, whether that is something that should be covered in a policy such as this.
Because you brought it up in your, it's mentioned that in the introduction. So at the moment, you have noticed, it is a very high level policy for the reason that we want engagement to shape it. But it is absolutely also been written not to exclude the future possibility of community asset transfers of those parts of land. That is something that I understand that we want to consider as we look forward into how we deliver services, and as that is shaped and formed over the coming year by the council, then we will look at that process when it is available for us to move forward.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Councillor Stewart?
Apologies, just very briefly. Having looked at some of this, and obviously not having many formal council parks in my area, it's a sort of more general point. If you transfer those, at the moment, my understanding is that anything run or owned by the council isn't subject to TPOs. If it's transferred, would TPOs then be applied? Sorry, tree preservation orders, whether it's area or individual trees, would that be placed upon anything that is transferred to either a local council or some other community body?
Through the chair, yes, if it is applied for them to become TPO to tree areas, then that can be done.
Simon, you're wonderful. It's recommended that the Environment and Community Protection Committee, that's us, endorses the use of the draft Parks and Open Spaces Policy, version 1, as a basis for the structured programme of engagement with members, town and parish councils, stakeholders, users groups, environmental partners and communities. It also approves the delivery of a series of engagement workshops to collaboratively, oh, that's the first time I said that for a while, quite a hard word that one, develop the final Parks and Open Spaces Policy in accordance with the Council's guides to engagement. And it also notes that the engagement process will ensure the final policy supports flexible management arrangements, including enabling rather than restricting future community asset transfers by setting proportionate, clear and achievable expectations for different stewardship models. And also request that the officers bring the finalised Parks and Open Spaces Policy back to committee for approval following completion of the engagement programme. Can I have affirmation? That's fine.
Chair, could I just ask, should the point about common land be mentioned in relation to recommendation 1, or are we taking it as read that it will be added in?
You happy to put that in there?
I'm more than content to add that in as a
Could you
recommendation.
make a note of that, please? That'll be done. So, is that okay now to approve that? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Kevin's turn.
Thank you, Chair.
So, special treatments policy. Can you tell us all about it?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to bring this to the EPC committee tonight. Licensing process for special treatments, which we've been doing, licensing team's been doing for many years, which includes tattooing, acupuncture, cosmetic piercing, etc. At the moment is regulated through a set of bylaws which were implemented by the two previous borough authorities, borough councils. And we feel now it's time that we bring this up to date to reflect current processes, procedures, etc., which are undertaken by the people undertaking the activity. Both the premises and the individuals need to be registered as a part of this process. It's not just the individuals, the premises as well. And what I'm asking today is really for us to consider three parts of this process. Firstly, we have created a new special treatments registration policy. The policy sets out how applications for special treatments for both premises and individuals will be processed and managed. And that's a joint process between licensing and the environmental health team. And that will be taken forward. The policy will give consistency and great guidance to both the customer and the officers who are implementing the policy. The draft policy is at Appendix 1 of the report. The second part is for the Isle of Wight Council to adopt sections 14 to 17 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act, which I'll probably refer to as the Act going forward, to include the relevant provisions contained within the Local Government Act 2003. Without us doing that, we'll be able to not be able to adopt those. The Isle of Wight Council probably is advisable in its own right to adopt those sections. We are still able to continue in the same way, but it's probably not advisable for us to do so. The third part is for us to is a recommendation to revoke the existing bylaws for special treatments and to adopt the new model bylaws which have been produced by the Department of Health as a guidance to local authorities to regulate persons and premises where these activities are carried out. The bylaws do now provide clear guidance for regulation and enforcement, and you will see that the draft bylaws are attached as Appendix 2. I must bring to the attention of the committee that we're only asking for recommendation to proceed to revoke and introduce new bylaws. That decision cannot be made by this committee. It can only be made by full council going forward. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to ask any questions regarding the three elements of this report. Thank you.
Has anybody got any questions? Go on.
You don't
No,
want
you
to,
wouldn't.
it's fine.
To make a comment,
Right.
the licensing committee considered this and were very happy with it, and
Okay.
it's the reason it's come up to this committee.
Okay, so we're going to agree all that you've read out the recommendations already. You read them out in full. So, what recommendations that Kevin
What you said.
read out? Adopting the new bylaws, getting rid of the old one, taking the place, and the government. Local
So the
government.
three
Yeah.
parts will be to adopt the policy as Appendix 1, make the recommendation to revoke the existing bylaws,
Yeah,
and to implement the new bylaws to take it to full council.
yeah.
And the third one is
Okay.
to re-adopt, which we need a committee minute decision on, to re-adopt sections 14 to 17 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act.
Miscellaneous. So everybody okay with that? The ayes have it. Issue again.
Thank you, Chair. I have a second report that I brought forward to EPC committee tonight. It's the licensing services policy in relation to convictions, which we reviewed when we look at issuing licenses such as taxis, private hire, etc., to ensure that the convictions that may appear on DBS checks are suitable and sufficient to enable the person to be fit and proper to undertake the activity that they're preparing to do. Recently, there has been new Secretary of State published under the Secretary of State new guidance for taxing private hire standards, which in some places don't necessarily relate back to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. There's basically they're saying that some of the offences which may have been exhausted under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act should be considered if we're taking someone on as a licensed taxi driver. So the standard is greater under those new conditions. Previously, our convictions policy didn't include that new regulation. And although it's a statute and took precedence, there seemed to be a confusion around the policy didn't mention them, and therefore people were relating back to the policy. And that was evident in a recent taxi case we took to the Magistrates Court, where we had revoked a taxi driver's licence, and he was referring to the old convictions policy and not referring back to the new standard. So what this policy does is brings it all together under one roof and is one document to allow us and those people applying for licence to fully understand the consequence of the offences that may occur on their DBS.
It's nice that you're on that, Kevin. Thank you very much for your input there. I think we probably are okay with that. Anybody got any questions about that? I certainly feel safer with that going on. So everybody okay to put that one through a recommendation? Yeah. That was easy, wasn't it?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. Very much appreciated.
Yes, thanks. See you next June. Okay, so we've got for noting now. So the lovely Rachel, it's your turn. Want to put your microphone on? Is that working? Yeah. Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I'm Rachel Briscoe, the Environmental Health Manager. What I bring today to this committee is required by the Food Standards Agency with regards to a framework agreement to produce a plan for food service. And then we need a mechanism to consider and approve that plan. That plan ensures national priorities are delivered locally, and also it balances statutory demands from the Food Standards Agency with resources that we have within the team. So it uses local knowledge and is obviously very much based on risk. The reason I bring this plan today is a notification, because you will see in Appendix 1, the full plan, it only really has 5 days, I think 5 days till the 31st of March to run. So the plan that you've got in front of you in Appendix 1 has only 5 days to continue. So it is for notification, not for approval, but we have got on the forward plan for a committee, I believe maybe the July committee, the plan for this coming financial year. So it's not for approval today, just for notification. And what I've included in the Appendix 2 is just to give you an outline of where we are with regards to performance against the plan that we did set out to do. So we don't set out to do 100% of our statutory demands. We look at local knowledge and risk, and we outlined a plan to do 66% of what was expected of us. When I wrote Appendix 2, which I believe was about the 17th of March, we were looking at a 77% performance. And for the year coming, we're probably going to be looking at about an 82% for the whole of the inspection performance. So, yeah, unless anyone's got any questions. Well done. That's what I say. And Paul.
Yeah. It mentioned that 75% of businesses that are due to get a food hygiene inspection receive one. Why was that 75%? Because they're supposed to be done quite often, aren't they? I was just wondering for what reason was was there a bit of a delay there, Rich?
Okay, and that's the reason the plan comes to this committee to consider it and approve it. So that'd be very pertinent for the next year's plan, is that we need to balance resources and statutory demands. The Food Standards Agency would expect 100%. The premises are risk rated based on their frequency. So a very high risk premises would need inspecting every 6 months, and it goes down to a lower risk premises that are expected to be inspected every 3 years. So basically the higher risk ones, yes, you will see 100% performance, but then it drops down to the lower risk ones who are only achieving a lower percentage. But when you look at it as a totality, it is that 75%.
So the higher risk ones
The
are.
high risk ones,
are
100%
treated
of
high
all
risk.
of our A's, all of our B's, but then
And
it
that
does
goes down
taper
to people like, what was WH Smith, for example, it's because they're called something else now, but just.
Yeah,
like
we
the
have nearly
chocolate bars and
2,000, I
things
mean,
like that.
1,700 and something food premises. So they do go from your sandwich manufacturers, your really high risk, down to, yeah, as you say, like the news agents that just do wrapped sweets and such. So
Just wanted to come back. We know that we have a lot of cafes and food retailers across the island, but is there a good reason why it isn't mandatory that people have to put what they've been rated in their on display? Because there's places where people eat. We are supposed to be a tourism island, but there doesn't seem to be mandatory requirement for food providers to be able to do that. And I know in other parts of the country, Scotland particularly, it is a mandatory thing that should happen. And again, if I want to eat somewhere, I want to know what they're going to give me, and I want to know how they're ranked, and if they don't get a high enough standard, I want to ask questions. I know that I'm probably not alone here, but it's just one of the things that's puzzled me for a long time, Rachel, and I'm glad you're here to answer that question for me.
and I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, Councillor
Or
Blair.
even somewhere taking
would
over,
love
Rachel, and showing the one that was one there before and not the one for them now. Yeah.
I would love it to be mandatory, and I think our enforcement rate has dropped since the introduction of the scheme. So I think it is a real driver. It is a real driver for businesses. And certainly with the likes of Uber Eats, Just Eats, they have policies that you need a 3 rating or above. So it has really been a tool to increase compliance. And I would agree. But that, unfortunately, decision doesn't sit with us. It sits with the Food Standards Agency. And I obviously go to local engagement groups with them, and every environmental health officer up and down the country is saying the same thing. The legislation was drafted, but the pandemic came, and that's the reason we're being told that it's been paused. But we do work to ensure that they are displaying the correct rating, because that has been, a challenge at times. So,
Anybody else? Or we're going to note it? You happy to note it? Yeah, noted.
Oh, just a quick question, Chair.
Nearly missed it then, Vanessa. Nearly.
Just, I assume that mobile cafe, I'm thinking of Walk the White, where you get a mobile tea, coffee thing. I presume they come under the same regulations. Am I correct?
You are correct.
That's all I want you to know.
Yes, you.
Thank you.
Noted. Yeah, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you.
It's okay.
Okay, so we've now got the local nature recovery strategy verbal update. Is that going to be you, James? I see the smile on your face. You look very excited about it.
Thank you, Chair. And this is a verbal update, and hopefully befitting an item on nature recovery. There's no paper report, so no trees were harmed in the giving of this update. Yeah, absolutely. Just as a bit of a recap for councillors, so the local nature recovery strategy was published by the Isle of Wight Council in May last year, We were only the fourth authority in the whole country to do that. We're a national exemplar, so hopefully this is a positive update for you all on some of the work that's occurred over the last few months or a couple of months on that. So DEFRA ran a national event for all the responsible authorities in February. The Isle of Wight Council presented at that event. We were the only responsible authority who weren't a pilot scheme who were asked to present, so that was fantastic to be able to get our little story across in front of everyone else in the country. At that event, DEFRA confirmed a 3-year funding package moving ahead for LNRS delivery for all responsible authorities, which is brilliant. We're just waiting for the letter to drop into our inbox on how much that is. So again, that's fantastic news. The Island Nature Forum has been established and set up, and effectively that brings together all the right people in the room from an ecological and biodiversity background on the island. They're all island reps from various stakeholders, organisations, and that's effectively going to form our local nature partnership. So historically, we've been joined up with Hampshire as part of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight LNP. And because of the LNRSs, we're going to split into two. We'll have our own local nature partnership, which is the Island Nature Forum. So again, that's extremely positive for the island because it means we can focus on ourselves and not necessarily have to talk and go through all the projects that Hampshire are doing, and they'll do theirs. So that's fantastic. We had a really good business seminar earlier in the year at Key Art. So we had a load of organisations and companies from across the island come and hear about how they can contribute to nature recovery. And we've also produced a really good toolkit for anyone who's interested in this particular topic. So I'd encourage everyone to have a look at islandnature.org/toolkit. We'll send a link round and you'll see lots of ways that you can get involved in nature recovery, whether that's islandnature.org/toolkit. We'll make sure it comes round with the minutes. And yep, there's great information on there. However you want to get involved, whether it's in your garden, whether it's as a town and parish council, whether it's as a business, there's lots of good information there to help people. The reps from the Island Nature team, including myself, we're also really speaking to DEFRA a lot about the national reporting and monitoring of this. So they're using our kind of work to effectively shape what's going to go on a national basis. So again, a bit of a badge of honour for us on the island. And fundamentally, it's starting to have an impact on the ground as well, which is really good. So those of you who've walked along Ryde Seafront might have spotted some new signs around sandlings. That's a project that's come out from the LNRS. So working in partnership with the coastal team and Natural England, who are able to access funding to deliver that because of the LNRS that we've got in place. From a planning perspective, lots of developers are now starting to take interest and using the LNRS in their submissions to us. So the landscape schemes that we see as part of planning applications are looking at LNRS, looking at how they can put the right type of landscaping scheme forward for their development, which is great. We've got some scoping work underway that's looking at council-owned land and how the LNRS potentially might offer up some opportunities for BNG habitat banks on council-owned lands. There's a potential income opportunity there for the council moving forward, which we're just starting to get into. And the eagle eye amongst you would have noticed the draft open space policy that was in front of you earlier on references the local nature recovery strategy and making sure we manage our parks and open spaces in line with that LNRS. So all in all, lots of good work ongoing from the LNRS perspective. And we're maintaining our position as one of the leaders in the field in the country, which is fantastic. And we even had people from Cornwall complimenting us on the work that we've done, and given that they normally get loads of money from Europe, or used to anyway, to do their big teams on nature, that was again a feather in the cap for us on the island. So happy to take any questions from anyone, and again happy to report back at a future meeting in the same style if that's what the chair and the committee want. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Stewart's first, then Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Firstly, yes, it's really, really good. We've always said that, and we've all supported it all the way through. Just wanted to mention that having joined in with the Woodland Forum recently with the Forestry Commission, they were obviously aware of it, but also they were aware that of the possibilities that were coming out of it. I'm just wondering, in terms of the woodland economy, which is a key interest of mine, what we are seeing is that there are an awful lot of very, very small woods here, as there are elsewhere in the UK, which are not managed at all. I'm just wondering how the LNRS can tie into some of those possibilities, including trying to improve the state of some of the woodlands that are planted on ancient woodland sites, basically, sort of conifer plantations on ancient woodland sites. how we can actually allow those to be improved.
Yeah, really good point. And I think DEFRA have been really clear from the start of this process that the LNRS and the priorities and measures that are in it should be an unlock for funding. So if landowners potentially have one of those woods or areas of woods on their land, then if they're proposing a woodland management plan or some works that's in line with the LNRS, that should put them in good stead if they're looking at potential funding that's available through Natural England and the Environment Agency. We're seeing those two arm's length bodies from DEFRA commit a lot more money to schemes that align with the LNRSs as well. They were again at that event in Leicester and we're flagging up lots of different funding pots that are becoming available. So again, we'll be able to communicate that to landowners through the work that the team do.
Please.
I've got two questions, so I'm going to bring them both in together. One of the things I wanted to ask was the involvement of town and parish councils. They are key sort of like stakeholders on this. What further work can we do to try to empower town and parish councils? I know that again, Nick's side of the world, there's been quite a lot of work being done with trying to train tree wardens and getting tree wardens much more involved in doing things. And I'm just wondering, you know, what have we got a vision on how we can actually talk to town and parish councils, because they have so many ideas. We, you know, myself, and I don't know if Nick's going to come join me in a minute with an IWALC meeting, but it'd be great if we could go back to IWALC and say, well, we just talked about you guys. This is something that you can do to support it, because anything that is environmental, the town and parish councils are so positive, wanting to embrace things. That's my first question. The second question I've got is about the recovery of marine sites. One of the issues and concerns that I have, and I know Councillor Cameron is probably with me on this as well, is that seawater quality isn't anywhere near as good as we need it to be. This is, and I was just wondering also, working with our partners in places like Southern Water, is there something we can be doing with Southern Water to actually let them take greater ownership of looking after our waterways, looking after our beaches, looking after our seas, to improve our environmental bid for what we're trying to do?
Now there's a question.
I'm going to I'll take the first one first, gets a bit easier. So councillors will be pleased to know that we have an IWALC rep who came to the last Island Nature Forum. So Ian from the Island Nature team has also been to present at an IWALC meeting as well. So they are absolutely a fundamental part of this and making sure that town and parish council, town, parish and community councils are heavily involved. Obviously they're landowners as well. So the way that they manage some of the land that's under their control is going to be really important. And I think the idea is we'll have almost a bespoke toolkit for the parish, town, parish and community council. So if they've got land, here's how you can help nature recovery on that. Absolutely, Paul, you can write that one down. Yep. 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 And in terms of Southern Water, they are also part of the Island Nature Forum as well. So we have a really good representative from Southern Water on that group who was really positive, and at the last meeting was identifying some areas of funding that Southern Water have specifically for nature recovery. We also had a rep from the MOD there, similar. They've got specific biodiversity funds within the MOD, so the way they manage their land can access this funding. And now we've got the LNRS in place, it makes it easier for those organisations to say, we're going to use this in this way. So, yeah, they're part of the conversation and part of that group as well.
Anybody else? For anybody else? That's just for noting, isn't it?
Sorry, can I just very briefly?
Oh, there's always one that wants to come in at the end. Go on then.
Briefly.
Can you share the contact with MOD? Because I've got a very large MOD patch in my area, and I've never really been able to get them to engage.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, and it was actually really positive that they came along to the last forum and were really willing to engage as well. So I think there's, again, it's starting to gather a bit of momentum across lots of different organisations. So.
Thank you, James. Wealth of knowledge, as always. Thank you. So that's noted. Thank you. Right, so performance management. So consider the following items in accordance with the committee's responsibility for the overview of service performance and improvement. So pages 407 to 472. Any questions? Go on then.
Just one, there seems to be a very pleasing trend in relation to the number of fly tip incidents. Is that just people learning they shouldn't do it, or is there anything that's guiding that positively in that direction?
We are consistently creating change through closer working with the police at the moment. And you probably have seen our public realm officers working with their Operation Clean and Safe on many town centre walkabouts that are focusing very heavily on environmental crime and fixed penalty notices within the Cleaner Neighbourhoods Act. And that is really having an impact to have a visible presence within the community of both the police and our public realm officers, really helping the community through education, through dissemination, through discussion about things like incidental fly tipping, where someone thinks they're being helpful by leaving things out for someone else to pick up. But we will always have an ongoing issue, unfortunately, because there are those people who very sadly will take a short amount of money and to take things from someone and leave them in the countryside. If someone does not intend to pay for that waste to be disposed, they do know how not to leave any evidence of who they are. But we are seeing a pleasing trend of that starting to reduce, as we are seeing an increase in the visible felt presence of both police and public realm officers in our town centres.
And I was just going to say, coming out of that, what about those areas that don't buy into the public realm officers? Are we reliant on police then?
In those areas, the public realm officers do not have that dedicated time where town and parishes pay for the additional, but we do still visit the whole island. So there is still a basic overall statutory level of public realm officers visiting the island. We also, as you probably have seen yesterday, have restarted the Crime Not to Care campaigns on Facebook to remind people about their obligations to ensure that when they have someone come and collect waste from their home, that they do make sure they have a waste carrier's license, that they are someone who is allowed to be carrying waste, and that they know where their waste is being taken to, and that they gather that evidence at the point of handing their waste over to someone for money. Because that way, when it does become fly tipped, we can go back to the person who has fly tipped it and ask them to either remove it, pay for it, or accept the fixed penalty notice coming with it.
I was just going to ask about the new, because we talked about trees. So on page, well, it doesn't say a page, does it? But about the number of new trees planted. So there's a lot more this last year.
Yes, we were very fortunate to be recipients of a capital grant for tree planting, which led to a large number of trees being planted across the island in different parts. We've had some fantastic community support with that, helping to turn up and dig holes, make plant trees, and really become a community activity. So we have had a significant increase in the tree stock, and we will continue ensuring that our trees are looked after and are healthy.
I noticed a lot more in Simeon Rec actually recently, and it's really nice. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Dash. Well, let's go back to fly tipping. I regularly report fly tipping. And what happens, people come along and dump stuff next to the litter bin. Okay, microwaves, fridges, you name it, it gets dumped there. But the people who empty the litter bin just ignore it. And I just think to myself, why? I've tried to talk to the management and say, why don't you take it away? You know it's there, you know it's fly tipped, but it just gets ignored. And the answer I get is, oh, well, the crews, when they get back, they report it. Yes. It will stay there for days until I report it.
The one's picked up by whoever's looking after that bin, and one's looked after by is looked after by the bin. Isn't it? Two different contractors there looking after different things. One doesn't talk to the other one, basically.
I did that without even moving my lips. So But yes,
Yeah.
yeah, inside. So yes, Councillor Luciani is absolutely correct. So if it is sideways, then it is becomes the responsibility of Island Roads. So when the crews say that they're coming back to report it, they do. They report it on Fix My Street or through the hub for Island Roads, and it becomes their responsibility to collect it because it is a fly tip as opposed to
All I can
waste.
say, then they're not reporting it.
So
He means.
it means what?
I do. I use
thought
Fix
it meant
My
yours.
Street.
He else has reported, it should be on there, shouldn't it? Within a couple of days.
I do it. a couple of times a
Are
week.
they actually supposed to report it then?
Yes,
I'm
sorry,
not
I
sure they do,
misunderstood. I
actually.
thought you were talking about the residential waste vehicles reporting it.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, the crews will report it. It's something that doesn't make sense, and so it is on a list of things that don't quite make sense, as it were, that we are looking at in order to streamline the processes. But at the moment, the crews will go back and report it, and then it will get picked up separately. So, but having said that, that doesn't make sense. I agree with that. So we are working through a backlog of things.
My only response to that is they will report it, seems to fall down regularly.
I hear you, and I will take that back.
Cash, when parks are looked again off by somebody else, another contractor, if it was left in a park, would they report it as well?
I think the system that we have at the moment, as Michelle said, is very complicated. So we have street cleansing that sits within the highways PFI. We have domestic household waste, fly tip on council land, hazardous waste, animal carcasses on beaches, etc., within the waste contract. We also have different teams within the council. So some of Rachel's teams, some of my public realm officers also deal with environmental crime on different levels. We did do a really good piece of work where Cameron in the past had worked with us as a task and finish group to identify the blockers and the problems. Unfortunately, COVID disrupted that process. You will have noticed that we have been slipping forward a fly tip and litter policy update, which has been slipped forward on the agenda repetitively because we were waiting for two things to occur. One, the changeover of waste service provider given recent troubles, and two, the recent 2 weeks ago release of the updated statutory guidance on refuse and litter and fly tip for the national picture. So now that we have those two documents, what we will do is put that back on the agenda, and we will work across all of the new partners, existing partners, and make sure that we are looking at a more streamlined process that we can bring back to you and have some good engagement on how that policy is formed into the future before we do so.
Sarah, can we put that on the floor plan as well? Well, it's not called a floor plan anymore, is it? Yeah, can we put it on there, please? Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Ian. We'll get that on there. I'm going to bring Becca in, and then Paul, you can go afterwards.
Just a quick question. I noticed that there's lots of garden waste thrown in hedges, which make it very difficult for Island Roads to actually cut the hedges if they've got to deal with all this waste. Who actually is responsible for clearing the waste and also in ditches? Sorry.
Fine, thank you. Through the chair, the responsible party will be the owner of the land. So if it's private land, it's the private landowner. If it's council land, the council will have it collected and cleared. If it is highway, then highways PFI will have it collected and cleared. And quite often we will find pieces of unregistered land, in which case we'll take a pragmatic and practical decision to ensure that it is not causing detriment to the environment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be really boring. I'm looking at planning and homes built, and really, we're both being boring, yeah, Vanessa.
That's it.
I'm looking at number 38 on page 420, and it's great. We've granted planning permission for 961 new homes, but at 38C it says affordable homes completed year end is only 24. That again is quite disappointing. It is a priority for the council to build more homes that people can live in, and there doesn't seem to be too much of an improvement. And I know that it's a national trend, and What worries me, Jane, and this is a question for James and Tash, is that with a potential recession coming around, our expectations to build more affordable homes, more social housing, how can we actually address that in a positive way? What worries me is people being given the permission, which is identified in the report, but the homes that we want aren't being built. And what can we do as a council to try to promote homes people to build the homes that they've got permission for within a very, very short time scale? And I know what you're going to say, James, but I'm just going to let you say it anyway because I love you.
The question I have is, why is that on ours? Because it's planning. Does planning policy come under ours?
Planning policy, as the local area plan, goes to full council. Planning development control goes to planning committee. The finance and performance reporting only for planning policy comes to this committee.
Seems a bit odd one, because we never talk about housing here, do we?
No, it's purely because there isn't anywhere else where.
Oh, so it's just landed here.
So the budget reporting and the policy reporting.
Go ahead, James, then.
Sits here with us, which is why we have James.
When I saw this on the kind of, I knew this was going to come up. I think in some ways, Councillor, you kind of neatly distilled it in the bit that the local planning authority are in control of, which is granting planning permission. We're doing all right. The bit that the local planning authority or the council is wider that isn't in control of, which is physically building houses, is a challenge. And as you said quite rightly, it is a national problem at the moment. There's lots of reasons that house building across the country is one of its lowest levels for a long, long time. And obviously there's lots of kind of macroeconomic conditions that are impacting that, which again are outside of the control of the council. I think, you know, from our perspective as LPA, the permissions are there. We're not seeing that at the moment follow through into delivery, and certainly not into affordable delivery as well. And again, one of the challenges we have as an island is we have a very limited number of RSLs, so registered social landlords, who will take on affordable units on the island. One of those at the moment is concentrating purely on upgrading existing stock, so they're not taking on any new affordable housing. So even though there's lots with permission that's secured through 106 agreements, they're not being taken on by those RSLs. And again, that's not an island specific problem at the moment. It is starting to get better in other parts of the country. It's starting to ease through, and some of the changes that the current government have made to both the planning system and also the grants available for affordable housing is slowly starting to have an impact. So it may well start to trickle through to the island as well. But I think, in summary, the pipeline's there. The market at the moment isn't in the right place to deliver. And that's a big challenge for everyone involved. But unfortunately, it's something that we just simply don't control.
It's a bit of a statement, really. The only way we will build housing for everybody is to declare a moratorium on all housing except council housing. I think it was 1947, you could only build housing under licence. No private housing was allowed because we had too many people as a country to rehouse, which is why you have housing estates, I would think of Binfield, places in Wootton, which were built roughly 1947 onwards. They were council housing. Dagenham was a classic example. My bungalow actually was built in 1947, but it was built under building licence by an architect, which was very rare, and he was very limited as to the things that he could use. So as I say, until we go back and say, right, nothing will be built except council type housing, we're on a losing wicket, because the developers hold the whip hand. They own the land and they build what they want to build within. I know we have a percentage, but what's a third percentage on 100 house estate, for goodness sake? It doesn't even touch the iceberg. Thank you, Chair.
So that's the end of that one. So let's move on to the work plan. Now, there's only one thing on there. There's a few things that we've put on there, isn't there, Sarah? Have you got that there? Okay. Cash.
Let me put my microphone on, please. I'll start again. So currently we have for July's committee listed for flood and coastal erosion scrutiny, updates on recommendations made previously, a review of the Section 19 tracker, and update for getting it into a digital process. For the Eastern Yard, the data and projects updates to ensure that we understand the impact of the work taking place. And the update that was already listed for major coastal flood schemes that are being delivered on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council by the Environment Agency. In terms of crime and disorder, we have an updated report on the CCTV programme. Yep. Okay, and then in terms of decisions, we are anticipating the Food Hygiene Standards Intervention Programme, the waste operational policy updates to reflect the 26-27 budget amendments before we can implement them. Those are for the DIY waste and the charging for sharps at households. And the PSPO, disposable barbecues, lanterns and balloons in public space ban, outcomes of the consultation and recommendations thereof. Following that, I believe we have the Q4 performance and improvement as well as budget update. And then we have also just added the updated litter and fly tip strategy, which we should have into a position ready to consult by that point.
Did you put the tracker on that one? Tracker on there?
I did. I mentioned it earlier.
You did it. So much. I was just thinking, if I'm not elected, at least I've given you a lot of work.
Thanks. But it's all good work, and it's work that we enjoy doing.
Okay then, so moving on. Thank you very much, Tash. So we've got members' question time. Okay, so we've got 2 questions. Do you want to, Debbie, do you want to do yours first? Do you want to read yours out?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would be very grateful to read them out. So my first question, on Monday, the 2nd of February, the emergency planning team coordinated an evacuation of 11 residents from 7 properties at Riverview Court Avenue Road, Sandown, due to severe flooding. This is not the first time that this site has been the subject of severe flooding, but the first time that an evacuation has been called. It's clear that the situation is getting worse, not better. Last week, the government announced more than 2.3 million pounds is being made available for new and upgraded flood defences, to include a property flood resilience scheme. This is for the Isle of Wight, along with 2 capital maintenance schemes. So I have the following question in 3 parts. Will the committee commission a Section 19 report to be carried out specifically on Riverview Court as a matter of urgency? Will the committee lobby for Riverview Court to be considered as a top priority for this property flood resilience scheme to implement the recommendations of that Section 19 report? And will the committee ask for the wider management of the Eastern Yard and its tributaries along its full length be looked at under one of the 2 proposed capital maintenance schemes? Thank you, Chair. I do have a supplementary. Would you like me to ask that now, or shall I wait until I've had a response?
Yeah,
Okay.
But I think this leads into the water level management plan as well, doesn't it? But so the response is, under the flood and that's the wrong question then. Under the Flood and Water Management Act of 2010, the Section 19 investigation is required where the cause of flooding is not known, where there is ambiguity around the responsibilities of Risk Management Authority, RMAs, or where the incident is of such scale that a formal investigation is needed to establish accountability. In the case of Riverview Court, the primary causes of flooding are already well established, including the constraints of local watercourse, the hydraulic interaction with surface water and sewer systems, and the site's proximity to the Eastern Yar floodplain. The council and partner RMAs have a clear understanding of the mechanisms involved and respective responsibilities. Because the cause of flooding is known, there is no uncertainty requiring formal investigation. Section 19 report is not planned. In this instance, the source of the flooding is known and understood. The council has set up a multi-agency officer group, including Environment Agency, Southern Water, Island Roads and Isle of Wight Council, to look specifically at the Eastern Yard catchment area and the Riverview Court site in discussion at the next meeting, which will take place in the week commencing the 30th of March, with the view of identifying roles and responsibilities for tackling this long-standing issue. The capital projects that account for 2.2 million of the 2.3 funding announcement are existing established projects, with the now confirmed funding being used to keep existing flood defences in safe and effective working order. These schemes are part of the Coastal Cloud Defence Scheme in Shanklin, Yaverland and Ventnor. The remainder of the money, 100,000, is going to the property flood resilience measures. Should any future funding be available, then a key factor of any potential properties is reviewing the eligible criteria. And I think we spoke about this quite a lot earlier, didn't we, with the management plan, and JB wanted to have it every month because it was so important. Do you want your supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's a couple of items in there that I will be following up on when I get a copy of the response. My supplementary is, following the evacuation, a meeting was offered to bring together all the agencies involved, including resident representatives from Riverview Court, to evaluate the emergency response and to discuss what risk mitigation measures could be implemented, both short-term and long-term. I have not yet received a date for this meeting to take place. Please, can I have a date for this meeting? Thank you.
It sounds like a flood group. Is it flood group being set up? Because that sounds like
it was a meeting, Chair, specifically, effectively, if you like, it was a debrief after the evacuation emergency response. There was meant to have been a meeting. Now, bearing in mind that that happened on the 2nd of February.
Oh, it's in the response already. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, wait for the, I can give you this. Yes. Okay.
Is there a response that you can read out, Chair?
It's in the, is it? Oh, sorry. Response to supplementary question. Oh, I didn't realise. Sorry about that, everybody. It is getting late now. A multi-agency debrief meeting is being arranged involving emergency planning, the LLFA, the Environment Agency, Southern Water, Island Roads and resident representatives. The purpose is to review the emergency response. The date is to be confirmed with partners to ensure full attendance, and the council expects the meeting to take place following the elections. In May, formal invitations will follow once agencies have confirmed availability. You can have my copy, Debbie. Okay. Becky, you're the other one, so I've allowed this one. But just to say, there is no cabinet member anymore.
For some time, I've been seeking clarification on who is responsible for clearing the stones from Freshwater Bay Promenade, but I've not received a clear answer. This has now become a serious safety issue. Several people have already slipped and fallen on the stones, and I've reported these incidents previously. A further 3 people fell over the weekend. In addition to the accumulation of stones is currently obstructing clear emergency access to the lifeboat station for the fire and rescue services, ambulance service and Coast Guard. Will the relevant officer confirm? 1, who is responsible for clearing of the stones from Freshwater Bay Promenade? What immediate action will now be taken to make the area safe? And when emergency access to the lifeboat station will be fully restored? Thank you.
And Easter coming up.
Yeah. and it's
Okay,
coming up.
and the answer is the clearance of naturally relocated shingle at Freshwater Bay sits within the remit of the Environment and Coast Service. Shingle movement onto the parade is driven by unpredictable storm conditions and coastal wave energy, which are natural coastal processes outside the control of the Isle of Wight Council. Each year, the Environment and Coast team undertakes planned seasonal shingle relocation works, usually within the first 2 weeks of April, to prepare the promenade ahead of the Easter holiday period. While the council takes responsible steps to manage the promenade, it is not possible nor legally required to make coastal environments entirely free from natural hazards. Members of the public choosing to access the promenade when stones are present do it at their own risk, as is common across open coastal settings nationally. The frequency of clearance works is necessarily limited by an available budget and resources, and therefore it is not possible to undertake reactive removals every time shingle is naturally deposited. The council has received no reports from emergency services indicating that the presence of the storm displaced stones is prevented them from carrying out emergency functions. Last year, the Environment and Coast team met with emergency services leads to discuss access arrangement. It was agreed that, one, the presence of shingle on the promenade presented no greater operational constraint than attending a casualty on the beach itself, and two, although some vehicular access may be restricted when shingle is present, both pedestrian and air access to the beach remains fully available. The council will continue to monitor the promenade and carry out the scheduled annual clearance works, balancing public safety, natural coastal processes and the resources available.
Can I ask, when will the stones be cleared?
First 2 weeks of April.
Before Easter?
That's what it says in there, yeah.
Yeah, Easter, what date's Easter?
Good Friday, 2nd of April.
Thank you. And how often will they be cleared a year?
Sorry, how many times?
How often will the stones be cleared in a year?
Just that one time, sir.
The this year's clean is, we're just waiting for the confirmation from the contractor that it should be done the day before Good Friday. And we do not clear it in the winter because of the way the storm cycle moves the stones up and down the beach. We do a large clearance.
It's once, isn't it?
At the once, beginning of the year, and then by which time the storm cycles drop, and then we do not do it over the winter, as it is would be a pushing the ball back up the hill task. It would just come round every storm cycle, and we simply cannot afford to do so.
A bit like the sand in Rye, just keeps coming.
It's part of the natural processes of living on an island.